Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing well. Well, we're going to go on a little academic adventure today, a little hike if you will. We're going to be hiking down the two paths in Carolyn Callahan and Aaron Miller's child responsive model of giftedness. So you need to pause the video, stop, go dig around in your closet, find your tennis shoes, find your hiking boots. I found mine. Here they are. There we go. Got mine on. I'm ready to go. All right. So pause that video. Come on back. Got your hiking boots now? Okay. So we need to put those hiking boots on, and we're going to be taking a little hike down the two paths that gifted children tend to follow or can be guided along, according to Carolyn Callahan and Aaron Miller. And as I was reading this chapter, it made me think about that poem by Robert Frost about the two paths diverging in the woods. And so I thought to get us ready for our little academic hike and adventure today, we'd take a look and just share that poem. So here we go. Here's The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And you can put on your hiking boots while I read the poem to you. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler. Long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Well, our path today does not diverge in a wood, but rather diverges in our schools, where gifted students are often left lost as they're unable to find a suitable path to meet their abilities. So today, Carolyn Callahan's two paths, one being the academic accelerative path, the other the academic creative path. These represent curriculum options for gifted students. Let's think about who we're going to be hiking with today and what's the purpose of our little journey. So Miller and Callahan assert that there are two paths that gifted children can walk and be guided along that will help them lead productive lives. Their conception is based on the premise that the school environment should recognize needs of gifted learners and respond accordingly with curriculum options commensurate with their exceptional abilities, hence the responsive child responsive model name, because they believe the curriculum needs to respond to their needs. And I'm going to share with you a quote from the conclusion on, oh no, I'm running on reserve power. Okay, I'm going to hook in my cord here just a second. Yikes. All right, I don't want to have to record this whole thing. There we go. So hopefully we're good now. Okay, so here's the quote on page 49. It says, the goal in our model is to recognize the critical need to identify all children for whom the traditional curriculum falls short of challenging the abilities they have and who are mired in situations in which they cannot pursue the passion for learning through curricular options that might maximize their potential to grow up to be happy and self-fulfilled, whether as experts in their fields, creative producers, or creative implementers. Holy mackerels, these people love run-on sentences. Anyway, phew. But that pretty much sums it up in a nutshell. That's her last sentence in the chapter. So in this conception of giftedness, we have two groups with us hiking today. And the first group are the academic activists, and the second group are the problem-solving innovators. So Carolyn Callahan points out that these overlap, but they definitely have some distinct and unique characteristics. So I'm going to share some of those characteristics with you. So characteristics of our academic activists. And actually, I want to back up for a minute and just point out that I'm sure you've already noticed this in reading this chapter, but holy mackerels, it just sounded like I was reading Renzulli, and it seems like she was heavily influenced by his work, especially in her category of gifted students into two types, just like Renzulli with his schoolhouse giftedness and the creative productive giftedness. It's like she just chose two other different names and slapped them on the same thing. And her identification method is very similar to Renzulli's talent pool approach, and she quotes him extensively in this chapter. So while there's nuanced changes, really, if you look at Renzulli's approach in the school-wide enrichment model, it's pretty similar to what she's talking about. So anyway, back to her model with the academic activists. So characteristics. Like Renzulli, these people, the academic activists, are the schoolhouse gifted folks. They are the rapid learners, synthesizers. They have this drive to rage, to master something. They love to pursue their studies for the satisfaction that the intellectual stimulation gives them. And she quotes Winner as noting that they are notationally gifted in language and in numbers. And so that oftentimes, because they're gifted in that area, that they are very successful in our schools. She talks about that their motivation or their intrinsic motivation or their drive, they have a drive regardless of the situation. It's not situational. It's not as contextually motivated as the problem-solving innovators, and they love complexity and challenge. Now for our other group of hikers today along our two academic paths, we've got the problem-solving innovators. They love to engage in and solve problems. They love the creative process. They're driven by the desire to change things. That's what really stood out for me. And the role of passion plays a really important piece in their intrinsic motivation. They don't like the status quo. They tend to be more chameleons. Sometimes they like to work alone, sometimes in groups. And she talks about that this group is harder to predict the domain that they might eventually manifest their talents in because they're such chameleons. And she also talks about, and this was, I thought was interesting. She directly quotes on page 44 that that these guys tend to be pretty situational in their giftedness, and it says on page 44, giftedness is a behavior that emerges under the right circumstances. And I just, as I read that, I thought, really, that sounds just like Renzulli. So a lot of what I read from her really, I was trying to find the originality in it, and it's like nuanced originality, but it really seems very heavily grounded in the work of Renzulli. All right, and I talked about the characteristics of our two types of gifted learners, and like I said, Callahan acknowledges that they overlap, that they're not always distinct, that sometimes as one's pursuing a domain intensely, like as an academic activist, that will then lead to a desire to create a product or create a new insight in a field. And likewise, if somebody is a problem solver innovator, as they're solving a problem, they might be driven to really explore deeply into a particular content area. So we know the characteristics of these two types. And then let's get into looking at what do those two pathways look like as far as curriculum options. So the accelerative path, she calls it the academic accelerative path. She talks about the need for compacting, and once again, this really sounded a lot like Renzulli. The need for immersion in a particular domain, that the curriculum should should offer increased levels of depth and complexity, and that these students are motivated by the workings of their own minds. And then on the flip side, with our academic focused, creative, productive path, I thought it was kind of interesting that she added the academic focused, creative, productive path instead of just calling it creative, productive, because that's really what it seemed like it was. But I think she was trying to really emphasize this academic nature to it, because she even brings up this idea of kind of the negative connotations of enrichment, like with Renzulli's enrichment clusters. So that's what I'm wondering, maybe she changed the name of it. So she says on this side with those creative productive types that they require a little more support in their instruction and curriculum to help them immerse in a domain of interest. They need more guidance in helping to find their passions. They have a lot of passions, so they need help in discovering an area that they might find that sense of flow in. And they, let's see, what does it say? They need repeated and varied exposures to different domains. And once again, I just thought that sounds just like the school-wide enrichment model with type 1, where you're exposing students to a lot of different domains and interests, and then they get excited by one and they start to follow it, and then they can experience that more of that academic accelerated path as they really dive into a particular topic or domain. All right. Next, she gets into identification, and this is where, once again, it really sounded a lot like Renzulli, where she even mentions the importance of having a pool of talent, or the talent pool, but she decides to call it the pool of talent. And in the identification process, one thing that kind of sets, well, this is pretty similar to Renzulli, but she says that the identification can also be based not just on general and domain-specific aptitude tests or achievement data tests, but also should be based on a child's curriculum response to the curriculum, hence her child responsive model to giftedness, or her child responsive conception. So how do the kids actually respond when the curriculum, with this challenging curriculum? And she says you can use, it's kind of like the action reports with the type 3 projects. How does the student progress or respond under these learning challenges? And then when she moves into the assessment, she also references Renzulli and talks about the importance of assessing students in authentic situations while they're engaged in the learning process, like a type 3. And she says, you should be asking yourself these questions with assessment. Are the students engaged at a higher level than one might expect had they not been provided the differentiated learning task or the differentiated learning environment? She also talks about the importance of portfolios and the importance of working together with experts, consulting with experts to create benchmarks for accelerated achievement in particular domains. All right, so kind of in conclusion, wrapping up she talks about, and she states in her conclusion that both paths have equal value, and this was something I thought was kind of ironic because she claims that it is an artificial dichotomy between the two that have been kind of created. We like to create these dichotomies, but then it made me think, then why did you perpetuate such a dichotomy by proposing a conception based on two different paths? So at the same time that she's kind of criticizing this this tendency towards dichotomies, she presents one herself. And then I need to go ahead and just talk about how I would apply this conception with my case studies. And I'll take my case study, Michelle. And she's an academically precocious, now 7th grader. I had her from the time she was in 2nd grade through 5th grade. And she's a 7th grader now at Davidson Academy in Reno, Nevada, which is a public academy for highly gifted students. And so Davidson itself is a place that provides that academic accelerative path. That's pretty much the focus of the school, not so much the providing a place for that problem-solving innovator, even though I imagine that the school has a lot of problem-solving innovators in there. But my knowledge from how they structure their classes and from what I've talked with Michelle about is that they really focus more on developing that academic accelerative path, really going deeply into a particular domain or several domains. And so it made me think, what would happen if Davidson embraced more of this developing more of that creative, productive side of the problem solvers, and how might that change their curriculum, and how might Michelle's experiences be different, or how might she experience or develop her talents in different ways if she had the opportunity to have more of that creative, productive side facilitated than what is currently provided at Davidson. Okay, so for my discussion questions, first of all, my first question asks, which path entices you as a learner? So which path would you choose? The one less traveled? Anyway, not the one less traveled, but would you choose the academic accelerative path, or would you probably choose the, as he calls it, or she calls it, the academic focused, creative, productive path? And had you been encouraged to follow one of these paths when you were in your early years in schooling, how might that have changed your education? My next question is, choose one of your case studies. And, oh no, wait, let's see. It's on page 47, it says that each of the plans for identification of gifted deliberately contains a major component based on curriculum response. And then my question is, how might you go about identifying students, as Callahan suggests, using the curriculum responsive, the child responsive approach? Use your case study, and how it says, let's see, what approaches could have been used to identify your case study? So that's my question. I've just kind of scribbled on this paper, so it's hard to read. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed our little journey, our little academic journey today. You can take your hiking boots off now and get down to work. All right, see you guys later. Have a great day. Bye.